It often starts with this sudden, wave of heat rising up your chest, often simplified or even just dismissed.
Yeah, there's this common idea out there that menopause is like flipping a switch.
Because we're talking typically, 8 to 10 years on average?
That's the average, yeah. Sometimes even longer for some women.
So it really is way bigger than just periods and hot flashes. It's like a whole body thing. No shame attached because it's super common. Vaginal dryness and changes. You have to advocate for yourself. Push for that investigation. Imagine this. For years, maybe decades, your body had a rhythm, a pretty predictable cycle. But lately, things feel off. Maybe your periods are suddenly all over the place, early one month, late the next.
Or the flow changes completely, right? Super heavy or barely there.
Exactly, leaving you totally guessing. Or maybe it's waking up suddenly, middle of the night, heart pounding, soaking wet.
Yeah, drenched in sweat and just completely confused about what on earth is happening.
If any of that sounds familiar, if you're noticing these kinds of, significant shifts in how your body feels and works, you're definitely not alone.
No, that feeling of being a bit off-kilter, like your internal settings have been changed somehow, it's incredibly common. We hear about it all the time.
And these aren't just random things, are they? They're often signals.
Profound signals, actually. They often indicate that a major transition is starting.
Right. And that transition is what we're really digging into today, based on the source material you've given us. We're talking about perimenopause, a phase that, let's be honest, has been kind of shrouded in mystery or misunderstanding for way too long, often simplified or even just dismissed.
Yeah, there's this common idea out there that menopause is like flipping a switch. You stop having periods, boom, that's it.
But that's not really it at all, is it?
Not at all. The menopause itself is literally just one day, the day that marks 12 months in a row without a period.
Okay.
But the process leading up to that one day, perimenopause, that's the real journey. An extended journey.
An extended journey. I like that framing because we're talking typically, 8 to 10 years on average?
That's the average, yeah. Sometimes even longer for some women. It's gradual.
It's not like falling off a cliff, more like rolling hills?
Exactly. Rolling hills, sometimes bumpy ones. It's definitely a transition, not an event.
And what's driving this whole journey? Hormones, right?
Primarily, yes. Significant hormonal shifts are the engine here. We tend to focus a lot on the reproductive ones, estrogen and progesterone.
Because they become pretty erratic before they eventually decline.
Right. But the material we looked at emphasizes this isn't just about the ovaries. It's much bigger.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's like a systemic recalibration. Those changes in estrogen and progesterone, they have knock-on effects. They impact the adrenal glands.
Which affects our stress response.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the thyroid gland, which controls metabolism.
Ah, okay.
And the perimenopause can really mess with insulin sensitivity.
So blood sugar regulation gets involved too, even in the brain.
Especially in the brain, yeah. It impacts blood sugar use throughout the body.
Wow. So it really is way bigger than just periods and hot flashes. It's like a whole body thing.
It absolutely is, driven by all these interconnected hormonal changes.
So our mission for this deep dive then is to walk through the key signs and symptoms of this transition. We're pulling everything straight from the source material you shared. The goal is that by looking at these indicators in detail, you listening can get a better handle on what might be happening in your own body.
Understand maybe what's driving it.
Exactly. And feel, empowered to actually do something about it based on this information.
Recognizing the signs really is the crucial first step. You can't navigate it if you don't know what it is.
Right. And the material laid out, 12 key indicators?
12 key signs that suggest this transition is underway, yes.
Okay, let's break them down. Starting with maybe the most common one, the one people often notice first, which is irregular periods.
Yeah, this is often the flag. And it's not just cycles getting shorter or longer, although that definitely happens. It's the variability that's key.
Variability how?
Like 1 month could be a 24-day cycle. The next month, boom, 35 days. Then maybe you skip one altogether. And the flow itself can change dramatically. Maybe you always had light periods, now they're suddenly really heavy. Or the opposite.
Duration too, like how long it lasts.
Duration can change, yeah. Even the texture or consistency of the bleeding might seem different.
Okay. And the why behind this, it's about ovulation getting messed up, right? And ovulatory cycles.
Exactly that. There's a breakdown in the really precise hormonal signals that normally manage ovulation.
Can you explain that a bit more? Like the normal process versus what happens now?
Sure. So in a typical cycle, you have hormones from the brain, FSH and LH, signaling the ovary. Develop an egg, release it. ovulation happens.
Right.
Then the corpus luteum forms, makes progesterone, gets the uterus ready. It's like a finely tuned orchestra.
Okay.
In perimenopause, that orchestra starts hitting wrong notes. The brain signals might be off, follicles might not develop right, or the LH surge needed for ovulation just doesn't happen properly. But you can still build up uterine lining because of fluctuating estrogen. And then when estrogen drops, you get a bleed.
But no egg was released?
Potentially, yes. You can bleed without having ovulated.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge point. So just because you're bleeding doesn't automatically mean you ovulated that month.
Not at all. And this hormonal chaos, especially not ovulating regularly and therefore having lower progesterone compared to estrogen, that's really key to understanding a lot of other symptoms too.
Right. It sets the stage. Which leads us nicely into sign number 2, also linked to this hormone imbalance. Breast tenderness.
This might be something women are familiar with from PMS, maybe?
Yeah, sore boobs before your period.
Right. But in perimenopause, it can feel different, maybe more intense, or it lasts longer, or it happens at weird times in your cycle.
And let's link this back to hormones again.
Yeah, a couple of scenarios. One is just the fluctuating estrogen levels stimulating breast tissue. Makes sense.
Okay.
The other is having not enough progesterone to balance out the estrogen. So relatively higher estrogen makes the tissue more sensitive, maybe swollen, tender.
Estrogen dominance, essentially, even if levels are fluctuating.
Kind of, yes. That relative balance is key.
And while fixing the hormones is the long game, any, immediate supportive things people talk about for this?
They hinted at things often discussed in this context.
Yeah.
Like supporting your liver's ability to process hormones, because that's crucial.
Okay.
Eating more anti-inflammatory foods. And sometimes people explore things like evening primrose oil or castor oil packs. Those are traditional remedies.
But always best to discuss with a doctor or practitioner, of course.
Absolutely.
Always.
Okay, number 3. This is probably the most famous sign, even though people often get the timing wrong. Hot flashes and night sweats.
Classic ones, often lumped together because they're basically the same thing, just happening day versus night.
And it's way more than just feeling a bit warm, isn't it? The descriptions in the source material sound intense.
They really can be. It often starts with this sudden, wave of heat rising up your chest, neck, face, spreads everywhere.
Heart palpitations, too.
Often, yeah. A racing heart, and then comes the sweating, sometimes profuse sweating, totally drenching.
Followed by chills, because your body's just dumped all that heat and is now trying to cool down fast.
And night sweats are just that, but happening while you're trying to sleep.
Exactly, which obviously wrecks your sleep quality. Big time.
So what's actually causing this physiologically?
It's tied directly to the estrogen fluctuations and eventual drop. Estrogen helps regulate your body's thermostat.
The one in the brain.
In the hypothalamus.
That's the one, the thermoregulatory center. When estrogen levels are unstable or low, that center gets hypersensitive.
So it overreacts.
It overreacts to tiny changes in core body temperature, triggering this massive cool-down response, the flash and the sweat.
Like the brain's thermostat is broken or just overly sensitive?
Pretty much. Misinterpreting the signals because of the hormone shifts.
And the sources mentioned ways to manage this. I remember blood sugar being important.
Hugely important. Stable blood sugar is mentioned repeatedly. Dips in blood sugar can trigger adrenaline, which feels a lot like a hot flash or can make them worse.
Okay, so avoiding sugar crashes is key. Definitely. They also touch on adaptogens herbs that help your body handle stress better, because stress itself is a known trigger.
Right. And hormone therapy was mentioned too.
Yes, as a potential option for severe symptoms, really highlighting that hormonal root cause.
Okay. Moving to sign number 4. This is one the source is really stressed needs to be talked about openly, no shame attached because it's super common, vaginal dryness and changes.
Yes, absolutely. Needs open discussion. It's a direct result of lower estrogen.
Because estrogen keeps those tissues healthy.
Exactly. Healthy, elastic, lubricated. Without enough estrogen, the vaginal tissues can become drier, thinner, less elastic. Atrophy is the medical term.
And that causes more than just dryness, right?
Oh, yeah. It can lead to itching, general irritation, burning sometimes.
Right.
And significantly, it can make intercourse painful.
Which obviously impacts intimacy, quality of life.
Hugely.
The good news is that
Things like using good quality lubricants, specifically ones designed for sensitive tissue during this time.
not just any old thing.
Right. And products containing hyaluronic acid, which is super hydrating for tissues.
Like the stuff in skincare, but for down there.
Essentially, yes. It holds on to moisture and also focusing on nutrition and overall hydration to support tissue health from the inside out.
So practical things you can actually try.
Definitely. Tangible steps.
Okay, sign number 5. This one sounds like a serious warning sign. Heavy bleeding.
Right. While irregular bleeding is expected, excessively heavy bleeding is different. It's not something to just ignore or write off as part of the process.
And this what counts as a red flag here?
Things like sudden gushing bleeds, or soaking through pads or tampons really fast, like every hour for several hours straight.
Oh.
Or passing large blood clots. They mentioned anything bigger than, say, a quarter or a large coin.
That's a good visual.
These are signs you absolutely need to get checked out by a doctor.
And this leads to a really critical point the sources made.
Yes. While perimenopause can cause heavier bleeding sometimes due to those hormone imbalances, maybe the uterine lining building up unevenly and then shedding, you must rule out other causes.
Like what?
Things like fibroids, which are non-cancerous growths in the uterus, or polyps, which are growths on the lining, conditions like adenomyosis or endometriosis.
Okay.
Or, less commonly but crucially, things like precancerous changes or even uterine cancer.
So you absolutely cannot just assume it's perimenopause.
Absolutely not. Do not let a doctor just brush off significant heavy bleeding with, oh, it's just perimenopause, without doing a proper exam, maybe an ultrasound, whatever's needed.
You have to advocate for yourself. Push for that investigation.
100%.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Sign number 6. Affects a lot of women, impacts relationships, self-esteem, low to no libido.
Yeah, this is another one that can feel really personal, maybe isolating.
And while hormones play a part, lower estrogen, maybe lower testosterone affecting physical sensation and drive.
Right, those are factors.
Right.
But it's often not just about the hormones.
What else is involved then?
A huge factor highlighted is just sheer exhaustion, the mental load, the physical load of modern life.
Juggling everything, work, kids, maybe aging parents, house stuff.
Exactly. The constant demands just lead to chronic fatigue. There's a line in the material, something like, all I do is give to everyone else all day.
There's nothing left.
Precisely. Nothing left in the tank for intimacy, for your own desire.
That makes so much sense. And that exhaustion, feeling overwhelmed, it must affect the relationship side too.
Definitely. Feeling unsupported, maybe resentful if the household or emotional labor isn't shared fairly, that can absolutely kill desire.
So it's not just physical.
Not at all. Though physically, the tissue changes, blood flow changes due to hormones can mean it might take longer to get aroused,
Okay.
or maybe it's harder to reach climax or takes longer. So it's this complex mix, physical, emotional, lifestyle factors all tangled up. Got it. All right, number 7. Super common, massive impact on just functioning day-to-day sleep problems.
Oh, yeah. Disrupted sleep is a huge complaint in perimenopause.
What kind of problems are typical?
The classic ones are trouble falling asleep initially, even if you feel tired, trouble staying asleep, waking up multiple times.
That 3 a.m. wake-up call.
Exactly. Waking up in the middle of the night, sometimes wide awake for hours. And of course, night sweats, as we mentioned, are a major sleep disruptor.
But it's not only night sweats causing bad sleep.
Right. Beyond the hormone-driven sweats, they really emphasized blood sugar instability again.
How does that wake you up?
If your blood sugar dips too low overnight, your body releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to try and bring it back up.
And that wakes you up.
That wakes you up. Stress hormones are not conducive to sleep. High stress levels in general, an overactive nervous system, makes it hard to wind down.
And bad habits in the evening. Definitely.
Yeah.
Late night screen time, eating too close to bed, caffeine, alcohol, all that stuff messes with your body's natural sleep rhythms.
So the fixes are pretty foundational then.
Very much so. Stable blood sugar throughout the day, which means not skipping meals, balancing protein, fat, carbs.
Eating dinner earlier, maybe.
Yeah, giving your digestion time before bed. And really optimizing that sleep environment. Cool, dark, quiet. Basic stuff, but it makes a huge difference.
Basics are often overlooked, aren't they?
So true.
Okay, sign number 8. This takes us into the mental and emotional side of things. Mood changes. And this can be really distressing.
It really can. The range of changes here is pretty wide.
Like what?
It could be PMS symptoms suddenly getting way worse, more intense, lasting longer.
Okay.
But it also includes things like increased anxiety, feeling irritable much more easily, being super sensitive to stress, feeling overwhelmed all the time.
Brain fog, too.
Brain fog is huge, yes. And for some women, it can unfortunately slide into more serious depression or this really deep sense of apathy.
Apathy, like just not caring.
Exactly. Maybe you were someone who could always overfunction, push through anything.
Yeah, juggle all the balls.
And suddenly you just can't anymore. You hit a wall.
Yeah.
And that apathy can feel like, I honestly just don't care about anything.
Yeah.
Which can be really scary if that's not your usual personality.
That sounds really difficult.
It is. And a common way people recognize something's wrong is finding themselves snapping at family or friends over tiny things.
Or feeling like something is fundamentally wrong with them.
Yes. That internal sense of, what is wrong with me? Why am I reacting like this? Understanding the hormonal link, those fluctuating estrogen levels affecting brain chemicals like serotonin and GABA, plus the stress connection, helps validate that feeling. It's not just you.
It's physiological.
Okay.
Sign number 9 moves back to the physical body, muscle and bone weakness.
Right. And this points to needing an exercise evolution. It means recognizing that estrogen plays a really important role in maintaining both muscle mass and bone density. As estrogen declines, it gets harder to hold on to muscle and bone, but it also becomes even more critical to do so.
So what kind of exercise is key?
The strength training, lifting weights, resistance training, it becomes non-negotiable.
Not just for vanity, but for health.
Absolutely. It's vital for keeping muscle mass, which helps your metabolism, prevents frailty later on, and crucially, it stimulates your bones to stay strong, fighting off osteoporosis.
And what about cardio? A lot of women do tons of cardio.
The suggestion was actually to maybe reduce excessive, really long cardio sessions.
Really? Why?
Because sometimes that kind of chronic high-intensity work can add more inflammatory stress without giving you the specific muscle and bone-building benefits that strength training does.
Interesting. So prioritize weights.
That was the strong message.
Yeah.
And nutrition is equally vital here.
Protein.
Absolutely critical. Getting enough protein at every meal to give your muscles the building blocks they need.
And minerals, too.
Yes. Key minerals for bone health and just overall function. Magnesium was mentioned, selenium, zinc. Getting enough of those.
And recovery is important, too. You mentioned electrolytes.
Yeah, managing electrolytes becomes more important, especially if you're also dealing with stress or maybe thyroid issues, which can affect fluid balance and mineral use. It all ties together.
It really does. Okay, sign number 10. This one feels like the heart of it for many people. Fatigue and lethargy.
Yeah, this isn't just, I didn't sleep well last night, tired. It's that deep, persistent, bone-weary feeling.
Kind of reality check, didn't they?
They did. Like if you've been living that super high stress, always on, burn the candle at both ends lifestyle.
Which is so many of us.
Right. Perimenopause often forces a stop sign. Your body literally cannot sustain that output anymore. It's crying out for rest, for better nourishment, maybe a shift in how you spend your energy.
It's demanding change.
It really is. And the deep fatigue directly to inflammation.
Inflammation where?
Throughout the body. In the brain, which contributes to brain fog and low mood. In the gut, which affects nutrient absorption and energy. In the joints, causing aches and pains. Chronic inflammation is just incredibly draining on your system.
So feeling inflamed and feeling low energy go hand in hand.
Very much so. It's metabolically taxing.
And the thyroid connection was emphasized here too, right? Getting proper testing.
Critically important. The sources stressed needing comprehensive thyroid tests, not just the standard TSH test doctors often run first.
Why isn't TSH enough?
Because it doesn't give the full picture. You might need to see free T4, free T3, maybe reverse T3, and definitely thyroid antibodies, TPO, and TGAB.
To see if there's an autoimmune component or if the conversion of thyroid hormone is working properly.
Exactly. Thyroid issues are super common in midlife women, often overlap with perimenopause symptoms, and can be a major driver of fatigue if not addressed properly.
Okay, comprehensive thyroid check. Got it. Sign 11. And this one might seem a bit out of left field at first. Bladder changes.
Yeah, maybe not the first thing people associate with hormones, but definitely connected.
And it's not just one type of change.
No, the sources mentioned kind of two opposite patterns. One is frequent urination, feeling like you have to pee all the time, maybe urgency, that over-peeing feeling.
Okay.
But the other can be issues with retention, like difficulty emptying the bladder fully, or maybe trouble holding it for long periods.
Huh. And UTIs are mentioned too. Urinary tract infections.
Yes, there's often a link made between recurrent UTIs and underlying gut health.
How does gut health affect bladder infection?
If your gut microbiome is out of balance, it can affect the bacterial balance in the vaginal and urinary tract microbiomes too, making you more prone to infections like UTIs. It's all connected down there.
Right. And the direct cause of the bladder tissue changes themselves. Estrogen again.
Estrogen again. Just like the vaginal tissue, the tissues lining the urethra and the bladder rely on estrogen to stay healthy, plump, and elastic.
So less estrogen means those tissues get weaker.
Thinner, less elastic, less able to function optimally, which can lead to that increased sensitivity, urgency, leaks, or difficulty controlling things.
Makes sense when you put it like that. Okay, final sign, number 12. This one can be really frightening for people. Memory and cognitive changes.
Yeah, the brain fog we mentioned, but sometimes more specific cognitive issues.
Like what?
Difficulty finding the right word, that frustrating tip of the tongue thing happening more often, trouble concentrating, feeling like your thinking is just fuzzy.
Tasks that used to be easy suddenly feel hard.
Exactly. Needing more effort to track conversations or follow complex instructions.
And this really interesting, maybe alarming connection here, something about type 3 diabetes.
Yes, that was a significant point. Linking these midlife cognitive shifts, especially if they're related to poor blood sugar control, to this concept.
Okay, unpack that. Type 3 diabetes. What does that mean here? Is it official?
It's not quite a formal diagnosis like type 1 or type 2 yet, but it's a term used in some research. It highlights the link between insulin resistance specifically in the brain and conditions like Alzheimer's disease.
So, like insulin resistance in the body, but happening in the brain.
Pretty much. If the brain becomes resistant to insulin, it can't use glucose efficiently for energy. Glucose is brain fuel.
And that affects thinking.
It can impair cognitive processes, memory, processing speed, executive function.
Wow. Okay. So the brain fog and memory slips might not just be temporary glitches. They could be signals about metabolic health with long-term implications.
That's the implication, yes. It really drives home how interconnected everything is. Hormones, metabolism, brain health.
So the prevention advice circles back to familiar themes.
It absolutely does. The crucial stabilizing blood sugar is for brain health. Steady energy supply, less inflammation.
And sleep.
And getting enough quality sleep. Sleep is when the brain cleans house, consolidates memories, repairs itself. Absolutely essential for cognitive function.
Okay, wow. That was a lot. A really thorough breakdown of those 12 signs from the source material.
It really covers a lot of ground, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And it makes it so clear that perimenopause isn't just one thing. It's this complex whole system transition affecting us physically, mentally, emotionally.
It truly is. And just recognizing these signs, seeing them laid out, that's powerful for self-awareness. But the real power, I think, comes next.
In knowing what you can actually do about it.
Exactly. Understanding there are proactive steps, strategies, the material outlines to support your body through this. You don't just have to grit your teeth and bear it.
Okay, perfect transition. Let's move from identifying the signs to exploring those actionable strategies and solutions. Where do we start? What's the first immediate step recommended for you, the listener?
The absolute foundation and something you can start today. Start tracking your symptoms.
You mean like keeping a diary?
Precisely. Get a notebook, use an app on your phone, whatever works, but start logging things.
What kind of things?
Everything you're noticing. Your period details, timing, flow, how long it lasted, hot flashes, when did they happen, how bad were they, anything trigger them.
Sleep quality, mood, energy.
All of it. Sleep quality, mood swings, energy levels throughout the day, any aches, pains, digestive issues, the works. And crucially, note the timing and the severity.
And look for patterns.
Yes. Try to see if things link up. Does your sleep affect your mood the next day? Do certain foods trigger hot flashes? Do symptoms change depending on where you are in your cycle, even if it's irregular?
Why is getting that granular so important?
Two big reasons. First, it helps you see your own unique pattern. It turns vague feelings into actual data. You start connecting the dots for yourself.
Okay.
Second, and this is huge, that detailed log is an incredibly valuable tool when you talk to a doctor or a practitioner.
Because it shows them what's really going on.
Exactly. It validates your experience. It gives them concrete information to work with. Instead of just you saying, I feel off, it helps guide what tests might be needed, what treatments could help.
That makes total sense. Which leads right into the second action step, request comprehensive testing.
Right. The standard basic blood tests are enough here.
Not just checking estrogen on one random day.
Definitely not. The emphasis is on getting a full picture, looking deeper.
So what might comprehensive include based on all the connections we've talked about?
Well, building on those connections, it could mean that full thyroid panel, we discussed TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, antibodies.
Okay. What else?
Maybe looking at adrenal function, how your body handles stress, Sometimes that involves cortisol tests, maybe saliva or urine tests over 24 hours.
Assessing nutrient levels seems important too.
Very. Things like vitamin D, key B vitamins, minerals like magnesium, zinc, selenium. These are all crucial for making hormones and just overall function. Low levels can worsen symptoms.
Inflammatory markers, metabolic health.
Yes. Checking things like HSCRP for inflammation. And definitely those metabolic markers. Fasting glucose, fasting insulin, HbA1c, to get a sense of blood sugar control over time.
Some people talk about DUTCH tests. Were those mentioned?
That kind of testing, dried urine testing to look at hormone metabolites, fits into this comprehensive picture. It shows not just hormone levels, but how your body is actually processing and getting rid of them.
So the main message is, don't be afraid to ask for more thorough testing based on your symptoms and your tracking log.
Absolutely. You have the right to advocate for a deeper investigation.
Okay. So we've got tracking and testing. What about lifestyle?
These aren't optional extras. They're presented as critical pillars for navigating perimenopause well.
And number one, coming up again and again, was stabilizing blood sugar.
You can't escape it. It impacts hot flashes, sleep, mood, energy, brain function. It's central.
And the key action here is surprisingly simple.
Super simple, yet powerful. Don't skip meals, especially meals that contain protein and healthy fats.
Why is that so crucial?
Because regular balanced meals prevent those wild swings in blood sugar, the peaks and crashes that trigger stress hormones, and just wreak havoc on your system. Steady energy, steady hormonal signals.
Okay. Pillar one, stable blood sugar via regular balanced meals. What's next?
Pillar two, prioritizing sleep hygiene. We know sleep gets disrupted, so you have to actively work on making it better.
Which means?
Having a consistent bedtime and wake-up time as much as possible. Making sure your bedroom is really dark, cool, and quiet. Creating a relaxing wind-down routine before bed. No screams, maybe a warm bath, reading a book.
Treating sleep like the essential recovery process it is.
Exactly. It's non-negotiable for hormone balance and just coping.
Okay. Pillar three, diet-related again.
Yes. Reducing inflammatory foods. That chronic low-grade inflammation we talked about. It contributes to so many symptoms. Fatigue, aches, mood issues.
So what to eat less of?
The usual suspects, really. Processed foods, lots of refined sugar, unhealthy fats like trans fats, or excessive omega-6s from processed vegetable oils.
And focus on?
Whole, real foods. Lots of colorful vegetables and fruits, lean proteins, healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds. Plenty of fiber. Basically an anti-inflammatory way of eating.
Makes sense. And the fourth pillar brings us back to exercise.
Right, incorporating strength training. We talked about why it's important for muscle and bone.
But it's listed here as a foundational action you need to take.
Yes. Making regular weight-bearing resistance exercise a core part of your routine is presented as essential for vitality, metabolism, and long-term health through this phase and beyond.
4 pillars: blood sugar, sleep, anti-inflammatory diet, strength training. Seems like a solid foundation.
It really is. These lifestyle pieces can make a massive difference.
Now, beyond what you can do yourself, the advice on working with doctors or practitioners, right?
Yes, how to navigate those conversations effectively.
And the first tip ties back to tracking.
Come prepared. Bring that symptom log to your appointment. Don't just walk in saying, I think I'm in perimenopause. Hand them the data.
Why does that help?
It structures the conversation. It shows the pattern, the severity. It helps the practitioner quickly understand your specific experience and makes the discussion much more productive.
And then critically, if you do have concerning symptoms, especially those red flags like heavy bleeding,
the message is clear. Do not accept being dismissed. Don't let someone just say, oh, it's normal for your age, or it's just perimenopause. If you feel something is really wrong or your symptoms are ruining your life,
you have to push back.
You have to advocate for yourself. Ask for further investigation. Ask about other possibilities. Ask what can be done to manage the symptoms beyond just telling you to live with it.
And then maybe looking beyond standard care, considering functional medicine?
Yes, considering a functional medicine approach, or finding practitioners who really specialize in women's hormonal health from a more holistic perspective was suggested.
Why might that be helpful?
Because that approach often focuses on digging for the root causes behind the symptoms. Given how interconnected everything is in perimenopause, looking at gut health, stress, nutrients, thyroid, etc., all together can be really beneficial instead of just treating isolated symptoms.
Finding someone who looks at the whole picture.
Exactly.
Okay. So as we wrap up, there was a really powerful overarching message, wasn't there, about reframing this whole experience?
There really was a message of empowerment, I think.
Yeah. It wasn't presented as just this decline, this miserable phase to suffer through. Second puberty.
I love that framing. A natural, significant, transformative transition. Just like puberty reshapes you heading into adulthood, perimenopause is this profound recalibration preparing you for the next stage of life.
And it influences long-term health too, doesn't it? How you navigate this sets you up.
Absolutely. And the core message alongside that was, you don't have to suffer through it.
Even though it can be tough.
Even though it can be challenging, yes. There are effective ways to manage the symptoms, to improve your quality of life, to feel better. You don't just have to endure misery.
And we've touched on many of those ways: nutrition, lifestyle, maybe supplements for specific needs.
Right. Targeted supplements, potentially hormone therapy for some women, discussed with a knowledgeable practitioner. There are options.
And the final piece of advice was about timing. Early intervention.
Yes. Recognizing these signs early, understanding what's going on, and starting these supportive strategies sooner rather than later, it just makes the whole process potentially smoother.
Better symptom management, maybe reducing long-term risks.
Exactly. Being proactive pays off.
This whole deep dive has really illuminated just how intricate this phase is, how changes in, estrogen and progesterone ripple out everywhere.
Affecting blood sugar, thyroid, brain, bones, mood. It's all connected.
And understanding that interconnectedness, that feels like the key takeaway.
It really is, because it changes how you approach it, doesn't it? You move away from just chasing individual symptoms.
Like whack-a-mole. Hot flash cream here, anti-anxiety pill there.
Right. Towards a more holistic strategy.
Yeah.
Where you realize that improving your gut health or stabilizing your blood sugar might actually help your mood and your sleep and your energy levels.
Because it's all one system being recalibrated.
Precisely. Supporting the foundations creates positive effects across the board.
So as you listening, think about all these signs we discussed and the steps you can take, tracking, testing those lifestyle pillars. Here's maybe a final thought to chew on based on everything we've explored. If perimenopause truly is this second puberty, this fundamental reset of your body's operating system, how does really embracing that interconnected view, seeing how mood links to gut, how sleep links to blood sugar, how hormones link to everything, how does that empower you to approach your own health and well-being during this potent transition in a completely different, maybe more integrated way than you might have before?
Yeah, viewing these symptoms not as isolated failures, but as signals from this complex interconnected system that's undergoing a major shift. That perspective change, highlighted in the material, might be the most powerful tool of all for navigating this journey effectively.
Talking openly with doctors, seeking support. These cognitive symptoms, they're real, they're common, and they seem to be manageable, not just something to, grit your teeth and endure silently.
That's a really important point.
Okay,
as we start to wrap up this deep dive, we just want to say thanks for spending your time with us digging into this material on menopause and the brain.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Your insights, your experiences, they're what make this whole community feel so valuable. And we genuinely want to hear from you now. Based on what we've talked through today, what's maybe one thing that really stood out? Or perhaps what question is still nagging at you?
Please do share your thoughts.
Yeah, please do. Hearing your perspective helps everyone learn, and honestly, it helps us all feel a bit less isolated when navigating these kinds of complex changes.
It's a significant transition, no doubt, but also a really powerful part of life when you look at it that way.
Definitely. So maybe leave this with you. How does understanding this connection, the one between menopause and your brain health, how does that maybe empower you? Or perhaps shift how you view aging and change itself? Something to think about until our next deep dive.